The candlelight shimmered, the faint fragrance of flowers drifted through the air, and the gentle notes of a waltz began to play. A charming gentleman pulled out a chair and invited me to sit. "Happy 26th birthday to you." Everything left me spellbound. He poured wine into my glass. The dark crimson waves swirled, catching the candlelight, casting a mysterious glow that only I seemed to see. It was the glow of satisfaction. This was life, this was truly living. I wanted to raise my arms and shout so that all the beautiful young women out there could hear me. Ladies, don't waste your youth, don't waste your beauty. Love, indulge, while you still can. We clinked our glasses, and the heat of the wine flushed my cheeks. I turned and met his gaze, intense, burning, almost intoxicating. That look hypnotized me, awakening a feeling I thought had long died, ever since I got married. Love, passion, oh God, to live in that feeling was pure ecstasy. My body felt weightless, time stopped, the universe disappeared, only the two of us remained in the candlelit glow. "To you, always as young and radiant as this rose," he whispered. He plucked a small rose from the vase on the table and tucked it into my blouse, his hand deliberately brushing against my chest, a touch not meant to be hidden. He wanted me to understand, and I did. He extended his hand. "May I have this dance?" I rose, wrapped my arm around his shoulder. His hand tightened around my waist. The scent of expensive French perfume lingered as we drifted to the soft music. My whole being floated in the melody, as his distant whisper reached my ear. "You're breathtaking." My step faltered, I stumbled, and fell right into his arms. At 11:30 p.m., I returned home. My little girl was still awake, waiting. As soon as she heard the doorbell, she rushed to open the door. "Mom," she squealed, leaping into my arms. "You've been gone for hours. Daddy and I waited for you so long." Her innocent, expectant voice pricked my heart for a moment, but the feeling quickly faded. I lifted her up and pulled out a doll from Europe that James had sent me for her. I almost blurted out, "Uncle James sent this for you." Luckily, I caught myself just in time. "Here, Mommy brought you a gift." "Wow. This doll is so pretty," she exclaimed, hugging it tight with delight. The two of us stepped inside the house. On the table downstairs sat a large birthday cake, candles planted neatly on top, and a vase filled with 26 deep red roses, their fragrance gently rising in the air. "You should have let her sleep. I told her to go to bed and that I'd let her know when you came home, but she insisted on staying up to wait for you," my husband said softly. "And have you eaten yet? Let me heat up some food for you." His words pricked at my heart again, this time sharper than the pang I felt earlier when holding my daughter. But soon enough, the feeling vanished once more. "I already ate." "Come on, let's light the candles for her so she can go to bed," I replied. We lit the candles. "Make a wish," my husband said. I pressed my palms together and closed my eyes. In the background, faint strains of a waltz echoed in my mind, along with his whisper. "Oh, you are so breathtaking." And in the silence of my thoughts, a desperate wish slipped out, "Please, let him be part of my life." God, if my husband knew what I had wished for, standing before the very candles he lit with his own hands, how much pain it would bring him. For years afterward, I would always ask myself, on that night, there were 2 birthday parties. Why did I only think about one, and not the other? Both had cake, both had flowers, both had flickering candlelight. Yet why did his candlelight glow brighter than my husband's? Don't blame me, my love. Yes, I betrayed you, and I betrayed our child. But perhaps you should also blame yourself. The party you prepared had everything, except the whispers of desire, except the intoxicating gaze. We women don't truly need cake, nor wine. What we crave is that burning look, those tender whispers. Where were they, my love? I quickly cut the cake, handed slices to our daughter, and then went upstairs to bed. Later that night, as I lay down, he reached out to pull me into his arms. I brushed his hand away coldly. "I'm exhausted. Please, just let me be." With that, I turned my back to him, pulled the blanket over my head, and drifted into a haze where I could almost feel those fevered lips, those broken whispers between ragged breaths. My angel, a body stretched taut, arched in surrender, trembling in ecstasy. I heard my husband sigh softly, withdraw his hand, and turn away from me. The next morning, I ran into Kelly at the office gate. She pulled me into a coffee shop, and the moment we sat down, she asked, "So? Last night was amazing, wasn't it?" "It wasn't just amazing," I laughed, eyes shining. "It was heavenly." She glanced around the cafe, lowered her voice, and asked quietly, "Was it good?" I blushed, looked around as well, then whispered back, "Good? It's been such a long time since I've felt that way." She smirked. "Well, what did you expect? With an American guy? Of course it's better. Girl, you're going to enjoy even more than that. Just wait and see." Kelly was the one who had brought me to him. One day, after I complained to her about how dull my life had become, she said, "Why don't you get yourself a boyfriend?" "A boyfriend?" I stared at her wide-eyed. She looked at me just as surprised, like she'd seen a stranger fall out of the sky, then laughed at me with pity. "Girl, that's the trend now, the modern thing to do, you silly. You're young and beautiful, what a waste if you don't. Why throw your youth away?" "But if my husband finds out, what would I do then?" "How would he ever know? You work for an American company, plenty of excuses to be out. And if you're going to cheat, you better learn how to cover your tracks. Just try it once. You'll see. It's incredible." She tilted her face upward, dreamy-eyed. In the company, everyone knew she lived freely. She had married once but divorced after only a year. Since then, she had gone from one lover to another, never once considering marriage again. If anyone asked her, she'd say, "Only crazy women want marriage. Why serve a man when you can have men serving you?" And honestly, her life seemed appealing in its own way. At least she wasn't shackled by the dull routines of family like I was. "Do you want me to set it up? I'll arrange everything, for a guy," she teased. I neither nodded nor refused, but still she found a way to push me into his arms. And she was right. By the afternoon, the company announced my transfer. I was to be his personal assistant, replacing a young secretary who had only been with him for 2 months. Everyone came over to congratulate me. Even the girl I was replacing came up, smiling. Awkwardly, I told her, I didn't mean to take your place." She laughed brightly. "Oh no, I don't blame you. Quite the opposite. I'm perfectly fine with my $200 salary," she added. Her words eased my conscience. But later, at the end of the farewell party, as she said goodbye, she leaned close and told me, "Everything has its price, you know. And so does your $800. I watched her leave, puzzled, turning that sentence over in my mind, unable to figure out what she truly meant. Like a moth drawn into a raging fire of passion, I plunged in without hesitation. I was no longer the same. The monotonous, dreary rhythm of life, the steady tick-tock of a clock, was gone. Now, every single moment carried within it the spark of an explosion. There were nights when, even at 11:30 p.m., the house phone would still ring, and I'd hear his whisper on the line. "Do you miss me?" "Because I miss you so much I can't even sleep. Why don't you come to me, just for a little while? Just a little while, my love." Hearing his pleading voice, I could never resist. I would always find some excuse to slip away to him. I kept telling myself I had to stay rational, that this was nothing more than a fleeting excitement, a way to escape the dullness of life. After all, I had to preserve my family. But somehow, I couldn't stay rational. I felt bewitched by his sweet words, by the little gifts, by the roses he handed me. Like a moth, I was eventually burned alive in the fire of passion. Looking back now, I realize how blind and foolish I was. What did I really gain from him? A tube of lipstick, a rose, maybe a new dress. None of it compared to what I risked losing, my family's happiness. But darling, could I even still call myself a woman if, in the midst of such an intoxicating love, I had thought of that loss? We women are weak, trusting, reckless, easily tempted. And yet isn't it those very traits that make men desire us? God took a rib from a man to create us women. Why didn't he take a piece of the man's brain instead? If he had, would men still be so fascinated with us? So tell me, whose fault was it? Yours or mine? For not guarding your rib, letting a stray dog carry it off. But those were thoughts I had only much later, when I was left alone and abandoned in this world. Back then, in those moments, I always believed I was right, even against my father's warnings. One holiday, my father invited my husband and me over for dinner. After the meal, as we all sat together sipping tea, he asked, "You've both traveled to Europe and the States many times. Tell me, what do you think is the fundamental difference between Vietnamese culture and Western culture in general, especially American culture?" My husband thought for a moment, then replied, "In my opinion, Western culture emphasizes personal freedom, while Vietnamese culture values family." My father turned to me. "And what about you?" "I agree with him, Dad. I think the same." But my father shook his head slowly. "You're both wrong. Individual freedom and family values aren't the root causes of cultural difference. They are merely consequences." "Then what do you think it is, Dad?" I asked eagerly, suddenly curious about his answer. I was in love with an American man, so I wanted to understand this culture better. American culture is the culture of today. Or, to put it philosophically, it is an existential culture. Live fully for today. Enjoy everything we have in the present moment. Vietnamese culture, on the other hand, is the culture of tomorrow. Or in other words, it is a future-oriented culture, live for a better tomorrow. That is the essence of the difference between the two. An American might spend his entire life renting houses, but a Vietnamese believes firmly that you must have a home of your own before you can truly succeed. It's the same with marriage. At this point, my father paused and looked over at me. I grew nervous and lowered my eyes. Did he already know something? I wondered. Existential culture allows people to engage in physical relationships with whomever they desire, whenever instinct calls, without the need for love. To it, sex is merely a form of pleasure. Future-oriented culture, however, sees sex as the final result of an emotional bond. That's why our folk sayings teach, a needle piercing flesh may hurt, but flesh meeting flesh creates a bond remembered for a lifetime. Inevitably, existential culture exalts personal freedom, while future-oriented culture places family first, because family is the guarantee of a better tomorrow. So, which culture do you prefer? My father asked my husband, though his eyes lingered on me. My husband smiled and replied, "When I'm young, I prefer existential culture. But as I grow older, I lean toward future-oriented culture." My father chuckled. If only we could live in both cultures at once, right? So what do you think, my daughter? Can people live in two such different cultures at the same time? He didn't wait for me to answer but continued slowly. No, they cannot. Because the tomorrow of Vietnamese culture is built upon the today we live. That old saying, "You reap what you sow," speaks to this truth. The more I reflect on it, the more I realize how profound our ancestors were. They chose the words seed and fruit. From the moment you plant a seed until it grows into a tree and bears fruit is a very long process. And once the fruit is finally produced, if it turns out to be bitter or inedible, it is already too late, nothing can be changed. He paused, lit a cigarette, and took a long drag. Then his voice softened, half conversational, half confessional. We are Vietnamese. We live within a Vietnamese community. Normally, we don't think much about the power of culture. But the moment we go against its traditions, we realize just how crushing that power can be. It will grind our lives down and never let us live in peace again. You must always remember that, my father said. I lowered my head, unable to meet his eyes. I knew exactly what he meant. My father was a man of sensitivity and depth. He never interfered harshly in my private life. If there was something my husband and I were doing wrong, he would simply offer advice in the form of quiet conversations like this. Normally, I listened to him carefully. But this time, whether it was temptation or fate, I brushed aside all his warnings, a choice I would later pay for dearly. That day, he asked me to bring a document down to the planning department. I carried it there, about to knock on the door, when suddenly I overheard someone inside sneer. "Still that whore? She's running the show here now." Hearing my name, I froze and listened. Another voice followed. "Well, if she's not a whore, then what is she? The only difference is that she's with one man, while the other whores sleep with many. But in the end, what's the difference?" I was stunned. All this time, I had walked proudly beside him, thrilled when the chauffeur opened the car door just for me. I thought people were looking at me with envy, admiration, maybe even a touch of jealousy. But no, it turned out they were looking at me the way they would at a prostitute. Now I finally understood the meaning of those words, everything has its price. Including my $800, as that girl I replaced had said. I couldn't bring myself to enter the planning department. I quickly handed the document to someone else and asked them to deliver it. And yet, I began to sense something different in how people treated me. Still, I tried not to dwell on it. One day, I spoke to Kevin. "Don't you feel like people are acting differently toward me lately? They're distant, not as warm as before. Why do you care about nonsense like that?" "It's just jealousy," Kevin shrugged. "Even Kelly told me the same. It's all envy. Every woman dreams of being the executive assistant to the CEO. Just keep things discreet, you've been way too obvious. People don't like it when it's rubbed in their faces." I tried to believe it was jealousy. But the truth was harsher, it wasn't jealousy at all. None of them actually dreamed of that executive assistant job, because it was only ever meant for women. My head heavy with shame and confusion, I went back home. I didn't see my little girl run out to greet me like she usually did. When I stepped into the house, I found her playing house with the doll that he had bought her earlier. I sat down beside her. "Why don't you let this doll join in?" I said softly, placing the doll John had given her into the little playset. Immediately, she threw the doll aside. "I hate it. It's scary." The word struck me like a slap across the face. I turned sharply toward my husband, anger flaring. "This is between adults. Why would you poison our child against me?" He looked at me with a cold, expressionless stare. And in that gaze, I knew, everything was over. "I haven't said a word to her," he said flatly. "If that's how she feels about you, maybe you should be asking yourself why." "Don't ask me." "You coward," I spat back. "What did you just say?" he roared, his hand flashing across my face with a stinging slap. "Get out of my house." He jabbed his finger toward the door. I lifted my chin proudly. "Fine. I'll go. You think I can't live without you? Wasting my beauty on a man like you has been nothing but a mistake." The vein in his neck pulsed, his teeth clenched, fists tight at his sides. I stormed into the bedroom, packed a suitcase, then came out and said to my daughter, "Come on, sweetie, come with mommy." Tears streamed down her face as she clung desperately to her father's leg. "No. I'm staying here with Daddy." I froze. Something inside me shattered. A heavy, invisible weight pressed down on my chest. Lowering my head, I picked up my suitcase and walked out. Passing by the old woman's refreshment stand at the corner, I overheard her mutter, "Afraid of hardship. When you have something, you don't know how to keep it. Once it's gone, you'll regret it." Out on the street, I hesitated. Should I go to John's house, or back to my parents'? I called John. After hearing everything, he said, "Even better. For now, stay with your parents. We'll figure things out later." So I went home to my parents' place. My father said nothing, just sighed, then went into his room and closed the door. My mother's face was etched with worry. She waited until the door shut before she whispered. "Do you think everything will be okay, sweetheart? I'm so worried. Maybe tonight I'll try to talk to your father." That evening, I brewed 2 cups of coffee and carried them into my father's study. He was sitting with a book. As I entered, he put it down and removed his glasses. "So," he asked, "what do you plan to do now?" "I'm going to marry John, Dad. He loves me fiercely." My father frowned, tapping his glasses against his palm. "Does he love you fiercely, or does he desire you fiercely? There's a difference, my daughter." His question made me freeze. The truth was, I didn't know. Did John truly love me, or was it only desire? Or perhaps both? For the first time, a seed of worry began to grow inside me. "And besides," my father continued, "even if he truly loves you passionately, you must remember, 2 people, from 2 different cultures, living together, it's never easy. But right now, it may be your only option." I hesitated, wanting to ask him something, but then held back. My father fixed his gaze on me. "What is it you wanted to say?" "Dad, is there any way to save my marriage?" He shook his head. "I think it's very difficult. Vietnamese people are forgiving in many things, but in this matter, they are strict. A woman may make mistakes before marriage, but after marriage, she must never. There's a saying, a man may marry a prostitute and turn her into a wife, but no man will marry a wife who becomes a prostitute. That is the truth of it." "And if John doesn't intend to marry me?" I whispered. "Then, my child, you will simply have to pay the price for the careless way you've lived." After that talk with my father, fear began to take hold of me. Truly, I had no path left except to cling tightly to John. I spent more and more time with him, desperate to bind him to me. Just as my father had said, I had to turn deaf to the whispers, blind to the scornful glances, even resort to schemes to hold on to my lover. Life grew heavy. The rosy horizon I once imagined turned a harsh white glare. 2 months later, I received a court summons delivered to my office. With the letter in hand, I walked into the CEO's office, my heart weighed down. As soon as I entered, John told me to lock the door, then pulled me into his arms. Normally, in moments like this, I would give in to him. But that day, my mind was still clouded with the court papers. I pushed his hands away. "Not now, please. I'm not in the mood." "But I am in the mood," he said, lifting me up as he spoke. He carried me to the desk, pushed up my dress, unzipped his pants, and thrust himself into me. My vision darkened. For the first time, I felt as though I were being raped. When it was over, I ran into the restroom. My hair was tangled, my clothes wrinkled. I buried my face in my hands, bitterness flooding me. That cruel phrase echoed again in my head, "If she's not a whore, then what is she?" But what choice did I have? Every weekend I stayed at John's place, hoping that my constant presence would make him feel I was indispensable in his life. One day, his landlord received a guest, a friend newly arrived from America to work in Vietnam. John introduced me to him. The man looked at me with eyes full of admiration. That look in his friend's eyes gave me a strange thrill. I left the 2 men to sit together while I went to the kitchen to make coffee. Carrying 2 cups back, I overheard his friend ask, "Is that your girlfriend? She's gorgeous." I smiled, secretly pleased. As I passed by the living room door, I caught more of their conversation. His friend's voice was eager. "So, what are Vietnamese women like? Are there a lot? Are they easy?" "Easy, if you've got money," John replied. "I'm not talking about prostitutes," his friend shot back. "Neither am I," John chuckled. "Even the decent girls aren't much different. Take them to a restaurant once in a while, buy them a few expensive gifts, and they'll swarm around you like flies." "And Vietnamese girls? Honestly, they're boring as hell. They only care about 2 things, lying in bed and showing off their looks." Well, the only thing I care about is having them in bed, his friend laughed. The two of them roared with laughter. Then, suddenly, I heard John say, "Hey, do you like the one from earlier? You can have her. I'll let you." The 2 cups of coffee slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. I ran away, humiliated and broken. A little over a month later, we were in court. I didn't dare beg my husband for forgiveness, I already knew my sins were unforgivable. But I pleaded with him for one thing. "Please, let me raise our daughter." He thought for a moment, then said, "All right. But I'll let her decide for herself." In court, we quickly settled everything else. But the matter of custody would be left to our daughter, as he had promised. The judge asked gently, "Child, who do you want to live with, your father, or your mother?" I sat below, staring at my little girl, my body tense, my hands clutching the edge of the chair, waiting. She, only she, was the true judge that day. "I hate Mommy," she cried, running straight to her father. I buried my face in my hands, hearing the verdict of an entire culture echo in my ears. New York, May 22, 2009. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have just heard is the short story Adultery by American-Vietnamese writer Nguyen The Duyen. Adultery, whether with a fellow Vietnamese or with a foreigner, always leads to the same inevitable result, the collapse of family and marriage. Those who don't have love or family long for it desperately. Yet those who do, often throw it away for fleeting temptation, lured by careless friends' words. Such betrayal is never worth the price.